Hello everyone, hopefully you followed my instructions correctly and you hear from the Do It Now on the register. You can watch this video in your own time, you can pause it and take notes at any point. There are certainly going to be some slides later on that you might want to take some notes on. So, like I said, today you'll be planning an answer to question 5, a description to question 5. You've obviously already planned a story version of question 5. I don't need to see this work by the end of the lesson. It will be next lesson that I get you to do some work to submit for me. So today we're going to go through different methods of planning as well as some do's and don'ts for you to be aware of as you tackle these kind of questions. For the lesson, you'll just need a sheet of paper. That's it. You'll also need a pen to write with, but it'd be helpful if you just got a blank sheet of paper. That's for our planning for the lesson. So we already know this. These are a few slides that we've already been through, but I thought we'd recap them. After you've done the first 4 questions on English Language Paper 1, which are on someone else's writing, so that's you analysing someone else's work, you get this quite big question at the end that's worth 40 marks, and it's a chance for you to write creatively yourself. It's about 40 minutes long, plus 5 minutes for planning, and that's what we're covering today. And you're given a choice of 2 questions. So for example, this was a task from a few years ago. We went through this again the other day. Your 2 choices were either write a description suggested by this picture or write the opening part of a story about a place that's severely affected by the weather. Now, last lesson we planned a story, so we don't need to discuss or tackle that bottom task there. Today we're going to tackle the task that is write a description suggested by this picture. And I'm going to give you a different picture at the end of this video. Don't forget, you can pause any of these slides as you wish to take notes from. You need to be careful that you are actually answering the question that you picked. You could be asked to describe the picture, or you could be asked to write a story about a picture. You could be asked to describe something entirely from imagination. So this slide just gives you a quick warning about reading the question carefully. We have also been through this week, or last week if you are in my top set, the success criteria for a piece of writing. You've already written down this list of things that the examiner expects you to use or to show within your writing. It looks like quite a long list from this slide, but really there's nothing within this list that you don't already do in your writing. Remember, I always say this to my classes when we do creative writing, but you should remember that you've been practicing your own writing skills since you were about 4 or 5 years old. And by the time you get to the end of year 11, all they really want you to show in your work in exam conditions is that you can write correctly, you can write well. Okay? They're not expecting a published novel from you, they're not expecting anything award-winning, they just want to see that you can write clearly and accurately using a range of language features and vocabulary. And you're all more than capable of doing that. So, obviously we have to plan our answer, but what do we actually do? What can we do and not do? What do we avoid as well? Here are a few things that you can avoid when it comes to planning the description that you'll do at the end of this lesson. So, the number one thing to avoid is overdoing the 5 senses. I absolutely hate this when it comes to descriptions, is when pupils just break down a description of a picture into all I could see was, and all I could hear was, and all I could smell was. And it just doesn't work. So by all means use the 5 senses. You should obviously talk about things that you can hear or things that you can see within a description. But you don't want to overdo it. Sometimes it's okay for there just to be a bit of movement in a scene, or there just to be one single sound rather than a lot of sounds. Okay? You don't want to overdo the 5 senses too much. The second thing that you could think about, and remember you can pause and rewind this PowerPoint, this video, as many times as you like if you want to write these down. You don't want to think about each section of a picture or a description in isolation. When you come to describing, you don't want to think about writing 4 or 5 paragraphs that are just about different things within a picture. You want to link them together. You want to be, like it says here, you want to be creating a piece that is fluent and coherent. So one area of a description flows nicely into the next. For example, if you were given a picture of a beach scene, you wouldn't want to go from describing the weather or the sky above the beach straight down to describing the crabs or the creatures or the sand on the beach. You'd want to transition somehow, maybe by going to the horizon or the water or some trees or something like that. You wouldn't want to jerk around too much. The other thing, or the third thing that you could think about, is not trying to wedge in too much creative writing, too many figurative pieces of imagery, like similes, metaphors, things like that. They obviously should be within your work, but not every sentence needs to have a simile in it. Things like alliteration and onomatopoeia and things like that as well. If you wedge them in, it just ends up sounding awkward. So see if you can naturally arrive at a few really well crafted images rather than trying to cram all of them into your description all in one go. Okay? Here are some things that you can do then. Now I absolutely recommend, and I want you to do this today, even if you hate them, because I know some of you absolutely hate a mind map, but I do want you to mind map what you're going to describe. Just managing to get your ideas down on the page around a little cloud with some arrows coming off it or with some ideas coming off it. They don't need to be in any particular order. They don't need to have any particular structure to them, but it's so useful in terms of planning a piece of description to just have a page in front of you with keywords written on it, with some key nouns of things that you could describe. Okay, with some ideas that come to you just as you're looking at the picture for the first few minutes of the task. That way you can start to then order them, to maybe number them, and to go through them in order in more detail as you start to write. So it is quite crucial to either mind map or bullet point or list. Today I do want you to mind map, but anything really that you can get down on that sheet of paper as a plan will work well. The second thing, and this is what I want you to actually do today, is to think about different sections of the picture. Remember, we're not going to think about these in isolation, so we are going to move through each section of the picture, and we're going to try and do that quite naturally. But if you think about this example here, you've got a concert hall. You could think top to bottom, so you can start with the sun's rays coming through that opening at the top, or the windows at the top. You can think about the lights as they are there to start off your description. You could then move downwards through the picture. You could think about the windows to the side and how they change the light. You could then think about the organ and how the pipes lead down to the piano and where the orchestra sits in the middle. You can think quite carefully about where you could have your audience or your seats around the outside. Are you gonna leave them for last? Are you gonna introduce them after you introduce the orchestra, or are they gonna come in before? So by boxing off the picture, thinking about the key parts that you can describe, then you get the chance to put it in an order that makes sense. You wouldn't go straight from the very top of this picture, the roof and the artwork that's on the ceiling, all the way down to the piano that's at the very front, or the flowers that are in front of that piano, without first sort of moving down that image in some way, creating a whole picture for your reader to read about. And the third tip that I'm going to give you is just starting with the main nouns. So if you struggle to make a plan, then start with the main nouns, the key things that you can see, and then maybe add some key adjectives or prepositions and things like that to them. So if you were given a picture of a park, for example, and you can see my plan here, the first 4 things I've written down are just park, swings, slide and trees. And that might be enough to get you started. You could then add some key adjectives, adverbs, descriptions to those, and that could be enough to get you going in terms of your plan there. Okay? So, you've got 3 choices here, okay? 2 of them are based on pictures that you can see in front of you, and one of them, the one in the middle, is based on entirely based on your imagination. Okay, so your planning strategy for today is this that I do want you to follow on the left-hand side. There are other planning strategies that we will cover at a later date, but this is what I want you to do today. So I want you to create a mind map. I do want you to do that on the plain paper that I've actually provided. If you're going to do the picture, either of the picture tasks, I do want you to box it off. I want you to think about maybe 4 or 5 key sections to the picture that you could describe, okay? But also remember that you can go beyond that. I think a key thing keep in mind if you're describing a picture is that you don't have to describe exactly what's in the picture. You can add little details in. You can go off in a different direction. If you were going to pick that top picture, you could go under the sea. You could go into the little huts off to the right. If you're going to describe the picture of the forest at the bottom, you can move through the forest and see what you can find. Okay? And the third thing, and the last tip, is that you could stick to those concrete nouns: palm tree, beach, sands, water, sky, clouds, sun, things like that. Okay? So your three options are planning, remember today. If you're going to write one of these today, you're just going to plan it for me. Planning to write a description suggested by the picture above. So if you want to describe the beach scene, create me a plan for that one. Option B doesn't come with a picture, so this is from your mind. Describe a time where you were confined. So you might want to think about describing a close quarters situation, maybe locked in a room, maybe describing some sort of experience through lockdown as we experience it now. Option C is write a description suggested by this picture, and that's the forest underneath, the light coming through, the darkness, everything like that. So have fun with it, Year 10. Remember that I don't need to see this work from you today, because I'll be setting you one of these plans, either today's plan or Friday's plan, for you to write completely in our next lesson. Remember that I'm still online as well if you need any help with it through the rest of the lesson. Have fun.